for all the speakers and the audience as well. Yes, we are now on. Uh, as in any virtual meeting, I would like to ask the audience to cut the mic and, if possible, cut the camera to keep the bandwidth on. Uh, I'd like to thank you all, and particularly our speakers, to be with us, for being with us today. We have here Dr. William Barth, Bill Barth, from the Texas Advanced Computer Center. I think Bill is currently the Director of Advanced Technology or Future Technology. We have Guillaume Muzo and Mariano Vasquez from the Barcelona Supercomputer Center. They have the affiliations that are on the announcement. And we have Guilherme Travassos, which is in charge of our big group in fighting the pandemic. So this is supposed to be a very informal meeting, and I'd like to hear our guests. And I will give the word right now in that following order. First, Bill Barth, then Guillaume Muzo, then Mariano Vasquez, and we end with Guilherme Travassos. I would like the speakers to keep everything within the 10-15 minutes time frame, so we have time to have a Q&A session afterwards. Okay? Bill, if you want to show something, there is on the right, you can share your screen if you want. Okay? But I will leave the floor.
Oh, here's the button. I see it.
Yep.
Let's try. Let's try to present.
Eu tô pensando em aparecer, ficar aí por, sei lá, meia hora, uma hora, se começar a ficar muito repetitivo.
All right.
So that working?
It's coming.
O Álvaro está falando aqui.
Was it working? Or I need to try that
not
again?
Yet.
Hang on.
Please. Okay, Bill, it's coming. It's coming to my screen. All right, we are seeing you. And I will mute me, and I would like to ask you, all the audience, to mute their mics so we can hear Bill. Okay. Thank you, Bill. I will time you. Okay.
Hang on just a second. I don't use Google Meet very much, so I got to figure out how to do this correctly.
Well, we are seeing I'm seeing your screen. No problem.
All right. So I'm just going to say a few words about what we've been doing to support COVID research on machines at TACC. I only have 5 total slides, including this one. So I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go through them quickly. We're Big Center. I'm sure you've heard of us. I'm not going to say a lot about TACC. We're kind of used to doing some of this emergency response research. We endeavor to help users design their models and practice their emergency runs here to be available when real events happen. And that includes things like regular annual storm surge modeling when hurricanes hit the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic. But we've been involved in pandemic flu modeling before with Lauren Myers here at UT. We had helped her build a portal for flu modeling with a code that she had, and we helped her wrap a web portal around her modeling code for that some years ago. And specifically designed to give to first responders, but it did have an aspect for that. And it's basically an epidemiological model about where evacuees should go and about what happens if social distancing is employed and schools are shut down and things like that. And also where drugs should go if you have them. And for flu, we have that. And for coronavirus, we don't necessarily have that. So there are different parameters that can be tuned in these models, and runtime is important. And so that's one aspect where we might play a role by helping improve the performance of the model. And that's something we got involved in this time around. As COVID became a thing, we started talking to Dr. Myers about reviving the pandemic virus model portal. This one wasn't as urgent to get into production again because nobody was necessarily running away from anywhere. And there's not necessarily drugs to be deployed because there's no vaccine yet, and there's no antivirals to be deployed yet. But there's still an urgency. These models happen to be written in MATLAB and Python, and so there was some question is, could we improve the performance of these interpreted languages or port them to C and C++? As of this week, the performance has been improved some, and the portal has been stood back up so that if her group wants to put this model back in front of first responders or in front of decision makers about how broad they can make these curves. Folks, modeling whole viruses and spike proteins and other things, and various genomics and proteomics folks constantly running here as well. And we want to be able to improve their time to solution so that we get faster turnaround towards when we do have potential vaccines and things to help us defend ourselves against the virus itself. So what that usually leads to is prioritizing jobs for users identified as participating in this kind of research. And sometimes, if they were not already users with us, prioritizing supplemental allocation and support for these user communities where necessary. Sometimes these users already had plenty of allocation and didn't really need our help. And sometimes they need to get stood up and running on the systems very quickly. And that's about getting some folks involved with these teams and getting them stood up and running on the systems very quickly. And this is something that we've done in other areas of research for a long time, including Alzheimer's, brain cancer research, and remote surgery, and strokes, and as I said, flu vaccine, and flu epidemiology, and more recently in blending data sources that are live in the world to help predict the mistreatment of children in Texas. And so bringing in live data sources with these models to help figure out where people are getting infected, and bringing that into these epidemiological models is an important piece of the research that these researchers want to do. So we like to be able to help out with that. And so, like I said, there are a lot of different kinds of models. This includes our largest system, Frontera, and some of our other systems like Stampede2 and some of which are being completely dominated by this research. And we just have to tell our other users that, yes, waiting times are going to go up because we're prioritizing the research of things that are affecting, not infecting, but affecting the entire nation and the entire world, because these jobs are very important to national security and international research. So we have, like I said, computational epidemiology, the whole virus simulation. That's work done by Romeo Morrow and others, and computational drug screening, and then genomics, and how these viruses evolve, and other such things. And I haven't gotten everybody's name in here, but this number has grown since I stole all these slides from my boss, Dan Stanzione. So this number has grown from 16 active projects to probably 35 or 40, with more than 100 researchers funded by more than just these agencies in the United States and internationally. This includes researchers at UT like Lauren Ansel Myers and Gordon Wells doing contact tracing and actual virus modeling and epidemiological research and things like that. This includes producing the sort of curves like you've seen in the paper and other popular literature about number of hospitalizations and things like that. These kinds of traces in front of decision makers and trying to help them make good decisions about when to close and open government and schools, and when social distancing should begin and end, and things like that. And these models are typically bucket models with ODE models inside them that require, generally they're parallelized within a single node of one of our systems, and they're relatively straightforward models. Yes, is there a question?
Yeah, no. It seems that your slide is too small in the screen. Can you? I don't think you're in presentation mode. I just realized something like that. I'm sorry to interrupt, but you can go on.
Okay. Well, and I can mail these slides out. They're not private.
Okay, thank you.
And then, so we've provided a lot of support for a lot of these users, and a lot of them are doing, like I said, these epidemiological models and these important, atomistic molecular dynamics models to do whole virus simulation and other such things. We prioritize these simulations on our systems, and dedicated some person time to help them optimize the simulation of these or running of these models, including some code performance and tuning where we can, which includes getting into some of these codes, which were not necessarily written by computational experts, but written by biologists and epidemiologists. We don't necessarily have the computational aspects at the forefront of their experience. And that's basically what we've done. And so I'm open to any questions. Hopefully that at least will kick things off.
Right, thanks, Bill. Well, I mean, I think in order to keep things, I will open for 3 questions right now, and then we have if you want, a longer section of Q&A, depending on the availability of our guests. Okay.
Sure.
We are open for Q&A. Is there any question for Bill?
Yeah, hi, Álvaro. I do have a question for Bill.
Yes, please.
Bill, it was wonderful to.
Sorry,
it was wonderful.
Could you please identify yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Guilherme Travassos from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro. I'm sorry. Bill, it was wonderful to watch the initiatives on TACC, And my question is that the data, from where you acquire the data that you need to run all the simulations?
You know, I don't know. Each of the individual users comes up with these data sources in their own way. Some of them are connected to the CDC and the NIH, so it varies. I'm not sure. It varies from researcher to researcher.
Oh, got it. So you just offer the support to run the simulations, not all the infrastructure that they need, including data and resource to do it. They should do it by their own. Okay, thank you.
You know, and if they need help, you know, getting through some red tape, or you know, getting up another level to, you know, twist somebody's arm to get access to the data, we'll help out. We'll make phone calls, or you know, go to a meeting, or whatever is necessary to find the right person to get that data released to us. We're pretty good at that, but typically in a situation like this, better access to the data than we do. But you know, sometimes the researcher will say, I can't get access to such and such data, can you help us out? And a few phone calls later, it starts to flow. So it varies.
Okay, all right. Thanks, Guilherme. Is there any other questions, or can we go move on? All right. Let's thank Bill again. Bill will be with us. And now I think, thank you, Bill. I think, well, it's time for Guillaume Museau from the Barcelona Supercomputer Center. Well, come on in, Guillaume. It's the second Guilherme, it's the second Guilherme right now. We have William, Guilherme in English, Guillaume, Guilherme in français, Guillermo. Okay, all right. Thank you, Guillaume. Let's do it.
Yeah, so Alvaro, I will talk very briefly in general, because, well, Mariano will talk a bit more about what we are doing for the COVID problem. Okay, but I'm not talking about in the name of BSc, but I will just tell my feelings, the feelings that I have with respect, of course, with what Bill told. It seems that we don't have such a huge culture on urgent computing. I could say in Spain, not only at BSc, because in Spain we don't have hurricane, we don't have tsunamis. It's up to now it's not a very necessary thing, but of course with these new boundary conditions we have now, this is something very, very, very new for us. Okay, we are doing very regular forecast for weather, for contaminants predictions and things like that, but urgent computing is quite new. Okay, so I think the policy that has been established at BSc, and it's very, very strange, because we had this talk with Sergi Girona, which is the boss of Mare Nostrum father. We had this talk about urgent computing just before the COVID, so COVID was not even mentioned at that time. And because now, of course, it's a very fashionable thing, urgent computing. And we gain I don't know, maybe you don't know this kind of project, European project, which are called Center of Excellence in Europe. So Center of Excellence try to bring the expertise from different European countries on a single topic. So we have a Center of Excellence on urgent computing. Well, it's not on urgent computing, it's on hazard predictions. And the question about urgent computing was raised. So as there is no policy, no established policy for this, I think now what they are applying is, okay, it's based on the director's feeling. Okay, so for COVID it was a very easy decision, because okay, we put all the resources for this. So I know that now life science department is running a lot of molecular simulations. I don't even know if it is for drugs, to understand the mechanism of the virus, how it gets in and gets out. I don't even know, but we know that there is a lot of resources dedicated to life science department. Okay, and with this, I guess that with this new project, policies will be more organized and put in place. Okay, with time, I think it cannot be only the director that chooses, okay, this is problematic, this is not, because you put it in a very bad place. I mean, if he decides, okay, it's not urgent, and then something happens, you get in trouble. So I guess they will have to write some laws about this. And okay, so I talked about life science, and well, Mariano will talk about how we apply it in our department. We are, Mariano and I, from the computer applications and in engineering and science department. So at the department, part of maybe half of the department is dedicated to writing a simulation code in high performance computing simulation code. So it's a very generic code to do simulations in engineering and science in general. Okay, and one of our big topic is biomechanics. So we started some years ago working on the respiratory system and cardiovascular system, and with always the conscience that the code should work for large problems. This is what we are different, because it's not just another commercial code. We are doing things that they cannot do. Okay, so this is why we are different. We are not going to compete with them for engineering things that you can do with engineering software. And recently we created a spin-off. Well, Mariano is we'll talk about this right now. So we are applying what we've been doing during these years to the biomechanics realm. So maybe Mariano, yeah, you can start and talk what we are doing on this topic. Mariano, ¿estás ahí?
Yes, of course.
Vale, pues te dejo aquí.
All right. So if I may, Álvaro, I will.
Yeah, I would just say, okay, if you're doing this in tandem, Guillaume and Mariano, I will skip the questions for you both to the end of Mariano's presentation. Okay, thanks.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, I think you can see my screen now. Okay, all right. Okay, so can you see it, right? Well, so as Guillaume said, I will present what we are doing related to COVID in our department, and in particularly everything that is related to ALIA. Just to give you some introduction, our very large computer located in Barcelona is Mare Nostrum 4. So this is the size of the computer, and it's indeed it is not one of the largest in the world, but for us it's very large, and it's very well operated. So the good point of Barcelona Supercomputing Center, the center that hosts the computer, is that we have expertise on hardware, on software, and on data management. So what we do is always kind of a mixture of all the things. So it's a very nice place to develop a simulation code. On top of that, there is the center, which is hosting the computer. So it is a bit more than 500 researchers. It's a Spanish public research center. And we are doing, it was created in 2005. And since then, we are doing applied computational science. On top of that, if you think as a pyramid, is our team, the team that is led by Guillaume and myself, which is the ALIA development team. So right now we are kind of 50 researchers, or it is more or less 10% of the researchers of the center, with mathematicians, physicists, engineers, programmers, and it was born with BSc at the same time in 2005. And on top of that, like the tip of the iceberg, there is this company, this spin-off that we have created. That is what we are doing is trying to bring to the market all that is done with ALIA, but for the biomedical sector. I will talk about later. So with this infrastructure is that the infrastructure that we use to, in particular, in this thing, to try to help in the to sort to get out of this pandemic. The code is using industry-related projects. As I said before, it is born more or less at the same time that was born in the center in 2005. It is used in aerospace, energy, environment, and biomedical. These are our STARS application fields. This is, for example, the movie that you're seeing is our simulations on a wind field for Iberdrola company, a Spanish electricity company. I have to say that you will see very beautiful images because we have also a graphical designers team. So that's why we have these beautiful images, but all of this is coming from simulations. The concept of the code is that the code is for HPC-based simulations. It's mostly for coupled multiphysics and multiscale. So coupling does not shouldn't mean at all a bottleneck. It's for solving large-scale problems in general, and the goal is to predict the behavior, basically to to predict the behavior of complex physical systems. So in all that we do are more or less the same keywords. It is always complex and conventional physical and mathematical models, as the code is completely ours to program in the code, but whatever we need, and we can. Typically, the meshes can be very complex, and the post-process can be also very complex because of the sizes of the meshes and the amount of data that is produced. Always multiphysics problems with a lot of with problems regarding also visualization. So and accuracy is also very important. Efficiency and accuracy, because if the software must run in large computers, then we must be not just accurate but also efficient. Just when as more or less as a game, we started to call everything that is related to ALIA, but is for biomedical research. We group everything in a color, is red, so we call this ALIA red. The things that we are doing with ALIA and biomedical research is mostly at organ and tissue level, and mostly for cardiovascular respiratory. We are doing other things, but mostly cardiovascular respiratory are the fields we work most. So related to COVID pandemic, of course, this was something that it was urgent, not just for the use of resources, computational resources, but also for the use of human resources. It is something that really struck on us very rapidly, and we move our own human resources to tackle some of the problems that are appearing. So right now we are working on 3 things, which are some things about the respiratory ventilators, some things about ECMO, which is the extracorporeal membrane oxygenation, and on cardiotoxicity of the treatments for COVID-19. I will talk about this third one, the cardiotoxicity, mostly because it is the one which needs the most of the computational resources, and I think that it is the one that we are advancing the most, and also is the domain in which we can help people right now. It's something that we were prepared to do it, and we did it. It's important to know what is a clinical trial. A clinical trial is something that it is done to study new tests, to study treatments and drugs, to study the effects on human health. So if there is a new drug that it is used, or an old drug which is used for a new problem, or a medical device, or whatever, you go through these clinical trials in order to see if the drug is okay. Right now, these kind of concepts right now are very well known, and almost everyone talk about clinical trial on a new vaccine in Oxford, for instance. So for this, you always need people volunteering. It's for all kinds of medical interventions, so it is not just for drugs. It is for drugs, but also for, procedures and devices, behavioral treatments, whatever. So the idea of these clinical trials is to generate data on 2 things: safety and efficacy of a treatment. For the FDA, they had this vision until now, until a few years ago, but a very few years ago, typically on the regulatory side, especially for the medical devices, but for drugs is more or less the same. There were 4 different ways of attacking the same problem through laboratory experiments, human clinical trials, and animal experiments. So, and there was a very small part of this that were carried on using computers. But right now, and I think that this pandemic is going to accelerate this process, things are turning, and human animal laboratories still they are there, but computer things are more and more used and considered, but it appears a new player, which is the virtual patient. So I've been talking about what is a clinical trial, right? I gave the definition and explained you a bit what it is. So a clinical trial goes to the human portion of the cake. Now, what is an in silico clinical trial? So in silico clinical trial is exactly the same thing as the clinical trial, but now on a virtual patient. So this is what we do. We generate a population of virtual patients, and we test and we perform clinical trials on this population using computer simulations. So for instance, for the cardiac stuff, we have a patients database, including female, male, children with high definition data. With that, we can create a virtual patients database by doing some physiological meaningful variations of these patients and generating kind of a space of patients, virtual patients. And on that, we can test situations on health, on disease, and the treatment outcome. This is an example of the things that we are doing. This is a heart. You can see this cat in the middle. So in the first case, to your left, you will see the healthy heart, in which you see that it is colored by the electrophysiology, which is activating the mechanical deformation of the heart, which is pumping out the blood. This is all of this is done using Alia and running in Mare Nostrum. In the heart to the right, what we have done is we have diseased the heart in a given way, and we have put here a pacemaker, and we just tweak this pacemaker by changing some of the parameters and the position and things like that in order to recover the proper cardiac function. So in this study related to COVID, this was an example of the kind of things that we can do. So let us focus on what we are doing for COVID. So when you are trying a new drug, you have to test the efficacy. Efficacy is a treatment for a given disease does what it is supposed to do. So if the aspirin is supposedly to alleviate you from a headache, then if you take the aspirin, your headache should disappear. Then this is efficacy. But it is very important to see that the treatment is also safe. So you have to check if there is any associated risk with it, if the aspirin is going to have any collateral effect. But something that it is very important is the comorbidity, which is this risk is especially when additional conditions are concurrent with the primary condition. So like if a person with an ulcer is taking an aspirin, is going to, maybe he's not going to be any headache, but he is going to have some collateral effects on his stomach because of taking the pill. So this is the kind of studies that we are going after. What we are going to study is the cardiotoxicity. At what extent the drugs that are used to treat the COVID can produce some danger cardiac ill behavior. So these kind of drugs that are used right now, the antimalarials and antivirals, can bring arrhythmogenic behavior. So in their most dangerous types, they can kill you. So the goal is using our tool in order to assess this risk. So in our virtual patients database, we can create the patients, which are of a given gender, any gender, well, male or female, some comorbidities. Then we can go for, then we can go for the treatment. Then we can go for the treatment. And then we can study using different drugs concentrations, and then we can go to the outcome by studying the biomarkers. So we can do many things, like one patient against many treatments, many patients against one treatment, or many patients against many treatments. Of course, in this case, in the last one, the computational effort is going to be the largest. Just this, forget about the numbers, don't take a look at the numbers, but just to give you an idea, we are running now a case, and we have asked for almost 8 million CPU hours to praise. It was granted to start next week to run one of these tests. This is an example. So if we look to the right, the movie that it is going now, this is a normal heart, and the one to the right is a heart in which we are giving chloroquine. If you read in the news, chloroquine is one of the drugs that is given to people with these diseases. And you are not experts, are not going to go deeper into this, but we can see this associated problem, which is called the left bundle branch block, which is already in the literature. It is producing these sort of branch blocks with this dosage. So we were very happy because we obtained this result, which is confirming that our model it's good. It is with one example, it is not validated, but we are running through validations. So what we need input from experimental data in order to feed the model at cell level. Then we validate the model with ongoing clinical trials. There are plenty around. As you see here, one of the most famous is the Solidarity, which is run by the World Health Organization. But if you go to this clinicaltrials.gov, in the US, you see that there are 62 ongoing clinical studies on the different drugs. For instance, like here, hydroxychloroquine, azithromycin, different drugs. So the goals, what's going to be used is, we want to create a patients versus dosage database, so the doctors can use this database in order to have a clinical guidance. This database is going to be progressively enriched with more and more runs. This is very nice for the inclusiveness, because with our model we can run, we can have female and male. We can take into account age, health condition, poverty conditions. Something that it is important is, with this kind of crisis, if we manage to do things well, it will highly increase the credibility of these tools, computational tools for these sort of things, and be ready for any world pharmacological urgency in the future. So the needs, and this is my last slide, the needs. So I'm just asking you for help. So we need more core hours from supercomputing centers to run our cases and to feed this database. We need also experimental data to improve the model. As I said before, the cell model need to be fed by data coming from the studies, experimental studies done to check how each of the drugs are affecting the channels in the myocytes. We need also to check against clinical trials results to validate, but in general, these clinical trials results are public, but we need some things from the patients that are not already shown, like ECGs or data like these ones, cardiac data. And we need also pharmaceutical companies' engagement. This is something that it is not that easy, because they can think that what you're showing is that the drug, maybe it is, the efficacy is fine, but it is unsafe, which is not true, because what we're doing is trying to help the doctors to calibrate better the dosage. We are not saying that any drug is unsafe. And I think that, yes, I'm done with my talk. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mariano and Guillaume, for your presentation. I think we are open for some questions before I give the word to Guilherme. Then, okay. Well, I mean, is there any questions for Guillaume or Mariano? I say again, I mean, after all the presentations, we're gonna have a round of more Q&A. All right? No questions? Okay, I wait for my question for everybody in the end of Guilherme's presentation. So I will give the floor to Guilherme Travassos. Please, Guilherme.
Okay, Álvaro, thank you. So let me try to do something here that I am expressing my own opinions, and based on the observations that I am doing in the field, in the battlefield, because we are fighting against the virus around the globe. We are in the war, in a war that is a typically different one. We cannot see the enemy. We cannot see how to kill where it is, but we know that we need to kill them all. So, and together, that's the most important thing, together. If we are not going to fight together, then we are going to lose this battle. So think about all the issues, and maybe I will give a little of a disappointed talk here, because all of our friends are talking about huge supercomputers and fancy infrastructures and wonderful models, really nice things. I took a lot of notes here, but I would say that these computers, the supercomputers, are the regular computers that we need to use right now. So that's my point. So that's why I'm not going to promote the supercomputing here, because supercomputers are like regular computers in my mind at this moment. And I know that's something strange, but that's true. And one of the things that we can observe from the talks and the presentation, I really loved them, all the three. And I would like to have the slides to share, because the collaboration is I think it's a good side effect of this conversation. One of the things is that experimentation is key at this moment. So we are dealing with the things that we don't know, and we need to quickly discover something, anything we can. So experimentation is key, and the two things of experimentation that we can speed up the process is that the combination of in silico and in vivo experiments. That's a good example that Mariano presented in the last talk. So it's how to combine it, to use the huge structures that we have to produce some sort of confidence that we can run things in vivo. That's the only way that we can save time. That's completely different from the traditional approach of trying and trying and trying, and then see if we can do later. But one of the things that attracted my attention in the three talks, and that was the reason of the question that I asked Bill at that time, is that no data, no evidence. And we can have a really nice pieces of models, because if we do not have good data, it's quite hard to strengthen the confidence in the results. So that's something that we are lacking here. I see that data curation and the organization of all these storages and all these pieces of information, it's something that we do not have. And I can give you a concrete example from my side. So most of the difficulties that we are facing right now to produce any feasible result that can support the decision is the lacking of good data. And that's going to transform the process of fighting in a completely empirical process. And of course, mythology, when they have power in the hands, the mythology can propagate faster than the SARS-CoV-2 in the population. So I see that this is something that we should try to stress, because, for instance, most of the examples that we are presenting, and maybe it's because the reality, like, for instance, Bill exemplified very well the power of tech on dealing with different global problems, like hurricanes and earthquakes and so on. So but the reality that we have here in Brazil, it's mostly similar of our friends in Spain, because they do not have earthquakes, they do not have hurricanes. All the problems there, our problems here, that's fine, okay? We have problems everywhere, that's okay. That's the reason that we need computers. And but things that are quite important is that most of our products and results, they regard quantitative results. We are always looking for curves or for reducing the shapes, or that's fine. This is a really huge challenge. But we are facing here, and then maybe it happens everywhere, is the qualitative side of the results. And that's how to interpret a large, but really large amount of information that's purely qualitative and evaluate if this information makes sense. That's something that we should try to have a more, how to say, different flavor in our studies. Maybe we have it in different, but I'm just using the examples that we discussed here at this talk. So, for instance, the analysis of corpus, or to have a taxonomy, we lack a lot of things. When you talk about, for instance, running performance, and you talk about software, and that is produced by the researchers, I have nothing against the researchers, but I love software engineers. And then I see that we lack a lot of engineering in these models, in these software, that can make them, more, how to say, it's not better, but more feasible on using infrastructures like these that we are offering, and that we have available in our data centers. So that's one of the things. For instance, that idea of that Mariano presented about the in silico, the generation of data. Wow, if you have a small data set that's good enough to support the generation of future data, that will be wonderful. Okay, but how good is the data? How good enough should be this process? So we have a lot of discussions about this, and these discussions involve one of the first issues that Bill mentioned in the talk, in the very good talk, is that I think it was in the last slide where, or the previous one, is that he mentioned that three main dimensions: that people in research, proteins and molecules, and genomics. All right. So I would like just to stop in the first item, that people and research. It sounds like interesting. We have research, but we lack people. So I don't know how we can do it, but I believe that together maybe we can add really nice things in the pot. So talking about now, coming back a little bit to another dimension, that's the Hub Rio, Hub Rio, and then all this effort that we are doing at the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, together with several other institutes. So I'm just trying to say GT here, that's the task force, the task group. I believe that we have lots of things in common. I believe that we have lots of ways to collaborate. Regarding the experiments, we are doing things pretty, I do not say, Igor, but related here. That it's because it's a common concern in the globe. So we are looking for the guns, and we are looking for the weapon that we should use in these guns to kill this plague of virus that is, affliging the population. So I see that these are the issues that should be put on the table. Is that we need to experiment. To experiment, we need to have data, and good data, and how we can improve or increase the acquiring of data from different sources. I'm not talking about the specific policies that they have in their countries, but I'm talking about a general thing, because one of the requests in Mariano is that I need data, I need clinical trials. So from where we can collect them. The second thing is that we should try to improve and to increase the discussions regarding how to improve the quality. It's not just because the COVID-19, it's about, look, several of these discussions, maybe they are not going to impact the results right now, but they are going to be things that are important for our future. So I see this pandemic situation as a really huge opportunity to evolve. Is that it's terrible. It's really terrible. It's a painful stuff. So I'm working more than 20 hours per day trying to fight and involved in different things. But we should try to extract the positive things here. And then I see that it's a really huge opportunity that we have to improve trustability. That's something that we are missing for some time, that we can use to improve our capacity of deal with really huge problems collaboratively. Okay, it's like the CERN example. The physics, they know how to do it very well. So, and it's a great opportunity that we can evolve as people. And more than this, it's a really nice way to show that science makes sense. So this is what I would like to do.
Okay, thanks, Guilherme. Before I have questions for all the speakers, but since Guilherme mentioned specifically Bill, Guillaume, and Mariano, I would like to see if they can add or comment some of Guilherme's points before open up for the audience. Please, Bill, Guillaume, or Mariano would like to add something.
Well, I can. What I can add, just it is something that will arise in the question and answer. But yes, that's absolutely true. As Guillermo said, it's but well, in a 15-minute talk, you cannot talk about everything. But it's like data. The data with which you feed your models is which data. I mean, the kind of data that you use must be rich enough to give you good information. Also, what models are you using? At what extent the models are validated and really represent reality? This is, of course, something that it is being doing continuously. Validation and how do you perform the validation? It is very easy to, if you want to validate an aerodynamics code, it is very easy. You go to a wind tunnel and you put some with PIV, you can measure the velocity, but you cannot measure in this way the electrical activation in a living heart of a patient. So you need to, the validation in this case is different, completely different. And as Guillermo said, it is very easy to ask for millions of core hours, but for instance, here in Europe, if you ask for these core hours to any supercomputing center, of course, you have to prove that you are using them well. So in our group, we talk about 50 researchers, but this half of the time, I would say, almost half of the time, hours of these researchers, or maybe a bit less, maybe 40% time of these researchers is devoted, and especially led by Guillaume, is devoted to make the code more efficient in these computers. So absolutely, I said all this to reaffirm what Guillermo said. Yeah.
I think we want to say something. Bill, you want to add something? Do you?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
All right.
I'll speak up if I have something.
Okay. Well, man, before going to the general audience, I would like to summarize what I picked up with a very important message from our speakers. from Bill, well, I mean, I understand that TACC has a strong experience on call something that Guillaume called urgent computing, and they transferred this experience for this current pandemic. But as Bill pointed out, is very, very important in others, I say Mariana and others, is the performance of those codes. Otherwise, we're going to be wasting resources. So this is also a compromise. So, I mean, there's the issue of data that everybody pointed out. This is important. So, and then for respond to urgent computing, I think we have to think about performance of all the components. The other thing is that, well, very important that we, Mariana and Guillaume pointed out, is this idea of in silico clinical trials. This is very important because we can, in a way, if we have enough computation resources, we can generate meaningful statistical samples in order to help the in vivo trials. Those are very, very important lessons, and we have to have, like, let's say, the infrastructure ready to do this, to integrate data and to provide the resources and help the researcher achieve the necessary performance for urgent computing. I think, well, I mean, to summarize, this is a very, very important that everybody agreed. I think all our speakers agreed in that point. We see that TACC, by having the necessity to respond previously to hurricanes and catastrophes in this area, they learn a lot about this urgent computing. And we have seen that in Europe, or particularly in Barcelona, things are more or less like us. People have to reorganize themselves very quickly and try to respond as much as we can. And as a kind of messy. Guilherme here, he didn't mention, but Guilherme is in the IT forefront, our task force group in our university to fight the COVID pandemic. So that's why he is here with us today. So if anybody has something to add or any questions for our speakers, we are more than happy to entertain those questions. Okay, I will cut my mic and open it for the audience. No, nobody wants to talk. Come on, man. Come on, everybody. Well, what can I say?
I have one question.
Please, go ahead.
Hello, yes. Yes, I was very interested in all the talks. And one special talk about Mariano Vasquez. He was talking about virtual human, virtual patient, test and treatment, effects, and computer simulation. And I wonder why we couldn't do like let me say, a virtual model of the best treatment process. I say that for this reason. The main thing in Brazil, the main difficulty is the accessibility to health services and the quality of service. And I wonder why we could do something together to improve the accessibility process and the quality of treatment. Could be even in a virtual fashion. Suppose using all the knowledge that we have to promote like a international assessment process and treatment. That's my suggestion. I'll say why. In 2002, I have a conference in Rio about health service operational research. And the title was Accessibility and Quality of Health Service. And I wonder if we can contribute to improve the accessibility and quality of the treatment in general. That's my suggestion.
Yes, thank you very much for the question. It's I think that a very important thing on the sort of things that we and many other researchers are doing is that to reduce the hype, in the sense that we can do very nice things, but we are far from but we are still far from the ideal situation and from the perfect one. We cannot simulate a full virtual heart with all detail. However, and on the other hand, what we are doing is not just a game of researchers or crazy physicists. Myself, I'm a crazy physicist, if I may. But it is something that has its use. And I agree with you that it's doing these sort of things in which you try to study virtually in a cohort of patients, at least the tendency of a treatment. It is you are not going so far. We are not at all ready to say this treatment for this patient using these tools, but at least we can study the tendencies of the treatments. We, in general, doctors and regulators accept the uncertainty of clinical trials, because clinical trials on patients have plenty of uncertainties, and they very easily accept these uncertainties. But it's much harder to make them accept the uncertainties in the computational models. So it is an ongoing work trying to increase the credibility on the things that we do. But well, I think that we are just step by step, little step, going in the good direction. And I think that these crises can be turning points, and things are not going to be the same after them. And not just for many things, but also on the intellectual or spiritual point of view, things are going to must change also in the minds of people. And I think that this crisis can be a good opportunity for make things move in a better direction.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mariano. And now I would like to ask, we have someone, guys, that will be invited here. Roberto Andrade, are you listening to us? Can you add something to the discussion, please? No?
Alvaro, can I ask a question? Can I jump in, or
please,
are you following a list? Or?
No, please go ahead, Fabio.
Okay. So no.
Before I start, just let me add something. Yep. I think the point that Mariana said, that recognizing and incorporating in the modeling in all the simulations, uncertainty is going to be a necessary step for all the simulations. But please go ahead.
Yeah. So given the complexity of human being and all the process that you eventually trying to model, so I wanted to raise the point of AI, and how are you guys looking to the contribution of the state of AI models, either integrating with the physical models, and or eventually complementing the parts that we still don't know how to model them. So I know that, for instance, in epidemiology, there are many works that are more statistical aligned, and then using those models and so on. But what about the actual physical models and the parts of this phenomenon that could be handled by some type of AI model?
Thanks, Fabio, for a question. But Fabio didn't introduce himself. Fabio Porto is a data scientist for the National Lab for Scientific Computing. So please feel free to answer Fabio.
Okay, if I can start answering, and then I let Guillermo and Bill to, if they want to add something. But in our case, that's very interesting, and it's something that what we would like to do, and we are kind of setting the framework for doing it. Is something that we are not still sure on how to do it. We will need the concourse of experts in data science, because what we would like to do is artificial or machine learning simulations, machine learning driven, in which the machine learning is used to, let's say, low resolution but very large data, very large amount of data can help us to improve the models. Our models are mostly the inputs we need are high definition, but fewer data sets, and we would like to complement with the typical things that are used for feeding a model in machine learning. We still don't know how to do it, at least in this particular case, but it is something that absolutely we have in mind.
Thank you, Mariano.
Sure.
Bill, please.
I wasn't sure who the audience was going to be here, so I didn't produce one of the plots, but the epidemiological models that Dr. Meyer's group is running on our systems tend to try to include some of the uncertainty modeling that that you might like. Others are trying to do more. I know that Omar Gattas in the Odin Institute here at UT has recently taken an interest in taking these models and trying to add UQ to them and other things. But the curves that come out of her models now include a cone of uncertainty around each of the lines. But those graphs don't go to the public. They're harder to interpret, but they do go to decision makers who can be educated in understanding them. So anyway, so there's some attempt is being made at including uncertainty in these models already, and others are trying to add it more and more every day.
Okay, thanks, Bill. I think Marley would like to make a comment or a question. Marley, please go ahead.
No, actually, it's just regarding what Fabio mentioned in terms of AI.
Sorry,
and also
Marley, could you please identify yourself for us?
Oh, yes, of course. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My name is Marley Velasco. I am from the Catholic University, Pontifical Catholic University of Rio de Janeiro, from the Electrical Engineering Department. And I also work in the AI area, machine learning, and all these data science models. We develop many things. And it's interesting that Bill mentioned about the uncertainty, because one of the models that we work is actually to incorporate. And another interesting thing that he mentioned, that some of the models are not interpretable. So it's not something that can be understood, or the relationship between the variables or what is involved there. And it's also something that AI can help. And what is being developed nowadays is what it's called explainable AI. And it's something that it can help understand the relationship of the variables, whatever you are using in the simulation of the models, and understand the importance and how those variables actually relate to whatever you want to see in the output. So it would be really interesting to try to have this, let's say, collaboration, so we can have access to the models and also try to incorporate some machine learning algorithms in order to help. And what what Mariano mentioned, that of course, machine learning models, you need more data, but there are some models that can also help in generating data in order to increase and extend the database. So I think we have many things in common. So that's the only comment that I would like to make.
Thank you, Marley. Is there any other comments from the audience or our speakers if they want to say something?
Yeah, Álvaro, Guilherme speaking.
Please.
Yeah, just to add to the pot, so to join Mariano in the answers, that's the same here. We are now to evaluate different context variables that should be used in the. But again, we are trying to find these variables and the information he got then, and try to establish some sort of correlation between the phenomenon that we can observe in the field together with the spreading of the epidemic. And well, it's getting a lot of work. We have a group of people that is working with these. I am not the one in charge of that, but I am involved in the process. And then I must confess that the issue is much more how to find commonalities and variabilities in the whole process rather than just the computer power that we need to run the model in the end. So is to find the real challenge right now is to identify a good and initial model that can support the observations. So that's for me one of the things that's quite complicated at the moment.
Thanks, Guilherme. Is there any other comments from our speakers or the audience? Well, I think now we have been around for more than 1 hour and 15 minutes. And to my opinion is that we have a great conversation. I'd like to thank very, very much our invited speakers. Bill, you signed that I want to add something, please. No? Okay.
No.
And oh, right, Bill, please go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Oh, sorry. Well, I think this is something that Guilherme said before. I think this opportunity here is making us collaborate more and more. We have been, my relation with TACC and the BSC is fantastic. We have been working together for many years, and we have, let's say, increasing more and more our collaboration. I really thank you so much for your time, for your insights. The three Guilhermes, Bill. Guilherme in Portuguese is William. So the three Guilhermes, thanks a lot. I think Bill, somehow we will learn some Portuguese. And Mariano speaks Portuguese very, very well, as well as Guillaume. He speaks Spanish and French. And Guilherme, of course, I don't understand very much what Guilherme says, our Guilherme here, because he speaks so fast, so quick. But anyway, he seems to be speaking something like a Portuguese or English, I don't know. But anyway, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for your insights. And I do hope that this initiative is just the first of many. Thank you so much, and let's keep in touch, stay home, and be safe. Thank you so much. I'm recording this, and this recording will be made available for everybody in this room. Okay? Bye-bye.
Thank you for organizing that, Álvaro. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Álvaro. Congrats for organizing these. Make those slides available.
Obrigado.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks a lot, Bill. Thanks, Casimiro. Thanks, Diego. Thanks, Giancarlo. Oh, man, there's a lot of people here.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye, everybody.